What is going on, guys? This is All Gaming with my review of Tokyo Ghoul episode 5. And this episode, even though I did notice a few pacing issues here and there, overall to me, this right here was a good episode, and overall I definitely enjoyed it a lot. But the episode itself, it starts off with we have Kaneki. He's now having nightmares because of what he went through, and we see now that like something, or like some kind of like minions, they're like dragging him, and you just see like these giant faces with like masks, around him. But then we see Shu, he's there as well, and Kaneki think that at first, he's gonna help him, but then we see Shu actually try to eat him. But that right there is what caused Kaneki, to wake up. So hopefully, that right there, like those nightmares, it is proving to Kaneki that he really cannot be too trusting, because obviously he cannot trust Shu at all, especially with what he put him through. But after day went on, Kaneki was working, and we see now that like there were like a bunch of ghouls in the cafe, and they were talking about those doves that are now in the area, and like some ghouls were even scared to go out alone because of what was going on. But then we have the owner, the older man. He actually wanted Kaneki to go where Toka was, because she actually digested some regular food. She's now feeling ill, and we actually learned that she also lives in a cafe, but it's like on one of the upper floors. I'm pretty sure that they had made that obvious, because I believe that after Toka has stopped Kaneki from like eating, from eating Hide, we like saw her in this room, and I do believe that right there, it was like it already seemed like a part of the cafe rooms, so they like kind of make that a little obvious, but it was definitely nice for them to confirm that. But when Kaneki had went to the room, we see now that Hinami, but more importantly her mother was actually leaving. But at first, she didn't spot Kaneki, but after she did, like we have her leaving while like Kaneki is there, and we see Hinami. She's like learning, of course, because we saw her right in this book. And so right now, Kaneki is kind of worried about Toka, because he heard that like she was sick, and she said that it was because that she ate too much. So right now Kaneki, he like thinking the worst of the worst, that like she ate too much, like human flesh, and so that right there he like definitely worried about. But we see now that like a Hinami, while she was learning, she could not say, a couple of words, so she had Kaneki help her out with that. And we see that Toka, even though she was sick, she was actually going to make them some coffee, but Kaneki was going to do that. But Toka, told him that it was alright, because he's helping Hinami, so that right there is more important than like her, to making some coffee. And so now somebody was actually at her door, and it was her friend from school, the one that gave her some regular food in the first place that had made her sick. And so her friend here, she was like worried because Toka did not show up, so that was like definitely one thing to be concerned about. But then her friend, she actually spots Kaneki in the background, and that right there should give her like the wrong idea. But it was hilarious to see that though. But now we see that like her friend, she had made her like some kind of stew, and we see now that like Toka, she was actually gonna force herself to eat it. Now we have no idea if she had digested that or not, but she was eating that, because we can hear her, and we even heard her like kind of make these sounds of disgust. But we just have Kaneki like looking at her. And so then the episode, it kind of like skipped forward some. I'm not really sure how much they skipped over, but obviously Kaneki, he had just finished working out with Yomo, and I do wonder how that training is going. I'm not really sure why they're gonna showing that, because I would love to see the progress that like Kaneki is making, because that right there is pretty important, because he definitely needs to know how to defend himself. But for some reason they aren't showing it. They're just like skipping over that. But we see now that like while he was walking, he actually come across Nishio, who we haven't seen since like Kaneki had messed up, and we see now that he being jumped by these other three ghouls. And so right now we see that like Kaneki, at first he was thinking about just leaving, because after what he did, there is no way that like Kaneki should help him, but he does have a good heart. and he does approach these guys, and we see now that like these people did not want him to. These people, they definitely did not want him to interfere. And we see now that I believe it was like the biggest one. He was actually trying to take on, you know, Kaneki. But now we see that like Kaneki, he is getting better at fighting, because not only if the dodge improved, but he actually hit the Ghoul, and that right there, you know, was impressive. But for some reason, you know, like we don't see if the other ones, you know, joined in or if they ran off after they saw their friend go down. But we did see that like Kaneki, he did help Nishio, you know, go to his home, or you know, to a home, because when he gets there, we see now that it was the girl that we saw that he like messing around with. It was her, you know, Kimi, and so that right there, it was nice to see her, because I believe it was last week. Like they were like wondering, you know, if she knew where Nishio was, but now we definitely know that those two are actually, you know, living together, and we see now that like that Kimi definitely know he's a Ghoul, and we see now that she is mad at Kaneki for like what he did. But obviously, you know, because she's human, there's no way she's gonna fight him. But we see now that when Nishio was actually resting, we have Kimi and Kaneki, you know, actually kind of bonding, because we see now that like Kimi here, she was kind of feeling, you know, desperate, because she had no idea what to do, because Nishio was definitely not his full strength. So right now he's like really struggling. And I also forgot to mention that like earlier on in the episode, we saw Shu once again. He was in his library, and we see now that he like looking through his books, but it wasn't for that long, because we saw him, you know, like tossing one like after another. And then there was like this one scene where he actually still has that handkerchief that has like Kaneki's blood on it, and this guy is like freaking out, like he's freaking jizzing in his pants here because of the way that his blood smells. It was just so freaking weird. Like this guy, he has a very, very sick obsession with like Kaneki. And so now, you know, like after Kaneki and Kimi, after they part ways, we see now that like Kimi, she has stopped at this store. I believe she like bought some coffee or other things, you know, for Nishio, because right now he like definitely needs to be healed. But while she was walking, we have Shu appear out of nowhere and just kidnaps her. And at first I was wondering, you know, like why in the world would he do that? Because to me it made no sense, especially when that's Nishio's girlfriend, and Kaneki, you know, it's just like really getting close to her for the first time. But we see now that like Kaneki, he was at the cafe, and I do believe that he like possibly trying to get some flesh for Nishio to heal him. But I believe the area where they keep it at, it was locked, because obviously, you know, you definitely do not want to keep a place like that, you know, open all the time, especially with like all these ghouls around, because anybody can just break in there, you know, and steal something. But we see that when Kaneki, you know, was like walking out the room, someone had left a rose and a note for him, and it was obvious who did that. It was Shu. And so now that he read that, and he learns that like that Shu has kidnapped Kimi, he was going to save her. But when he left the cafe, Nishio actually you know, had the will, you know, to like make it to the cafe. And when he read the note, he was just wondering why in the world would like Shu do this, because really he has no reason to go after Kimi. And so now Kaneki was actually planning on, you know, going there to confront him, because Shu is the one that he wants. But Nishio, which is so determined, you know, to go after him, and to go after him as well, you know, and to save his girl, that right there was like really admirable, because even though he is so hurt and so weak, he will still, you know, go out there for the girl that he loves. And so when they do get there, we see now like Shu playing, it was definitely sick, because when they got there, he was like at first playing the piano, but he had Kimi on like some kind of platform. And we see now that the reason that he did kidnap her, it was because he wants to eat Kaneki while he eats her, and that right there is just so freaking sick and disgusting. And so now we see that like Shu was definitely not pleased when he saw that like Nishio came as well, because he was telling himself that he not invite him. So Nishio was like an intruder, and we see that because he was so weak, Nishio kind of got taken out rather easily. And so we see now that like when Kaneki, you know, had tried to fight as well, even though he can fight, you know, these like average Ghoul, he cannot really fight somebody on a higher level, because we have Shu here. He was like showing him what a real punch and a real kick was, and that right there was like doing some damage. But then we see Toka out of nowhere coming in with that sneak attack. But because she is so weak right now, because you know her body is weak because she digested, you know, some regular food, we see now that the injury that she inflicted on Shu, it only took 10 seconds to heal. And that right there was crazy, because it seemed like he was like losing a lot of blood. And I do believe, you know, from her sneak attack, she did like to short his eyes, or at least, you know, cut them, because there was just like way too much blood. And so now that he was healed, we pretty much have this fight starting, you know, between Toka and Kaneki. And I will say Kaneki was like definitely showing improvement. I am, you know, really happy to see that, you know, he can fight now, but he is still, you know, like not there just yet. And at first it seemed like that they were getting the upper hand, but it was only till we saw, you know, like Shu stop holding back. Because at one point, not only did he, you know, block their attacks, but he also, you know, like broke Kaneki's arm. And I also forgot to mention that like that Toka and Shu, they actually have, you know, a past together. And I believe it was like, I believe he said that it was a time around where Toka was like 14 and like he was 18, and Toka, you know, was a lot different, because, you know, she had this like great coldness in her eyes, but right now, you know, like that right there has kind of changed. And I do believe, you know, it's definitely because of people that like she's around, you know, like her friend from school, Hinami, her mother, and even Kaneki, you know, like those people have changed her. And I definitely cannot forget, you know, the owner of the cafe. Like they have definitely, you know, like changed her. And even though sometimes, you know, she does kill, she's not a kill that she used to be. And so now we see that like when like after Shu had broke Kaneki's arm, he actually impaled him, and he left like this massive hole in his body. That right there was crazy. But we see now that I believe he took like some organ. I'm not really sure what it was because we didn't see it. But like after he ate it, like this guy was like in freaking heaven. He was like really, you know, like spacing out here. And so we see now that he had kind of started playing around, because obviously like we see now that he had pretty much incapacitated like Toka, because she was on the ground for a while. And of course, you know, with like Kaneki's arm broken, this guy is just in way too much pain. And so when he was like walking, you know, to Kimi, so that way, you know, like so that way Kaneki could start eating on her, we see now that like Toka had got back up, but this guy, he had brought out his Kaguni. I'm probably not saying that right, but just out of nowhere he had impaled Toka, and that right there, which is so freaking brutal. But when he walked to Kimi afterwards and like pulled down her sleeve, we saw now that she had this scar, and that right there had like led into this flashback about Nishio's past. And his past, it was like definitely messed up, because he was like poor, and we have no idea, you know, what happened to his parents, but obviously they were dead. We just have no idea how they died. But he did have like an older sister, and his sister was like a ghoul as well. And Nishio, he did not want to kill anybody, but his sister, you know, took care of that. But they did eat. And so like over time, as they got older, we see them, you know, like starting to not want to be poor anymore. And his sister actually got a job. Like, but the thing is, she always kept getting fired. But when Nishio got older, he also got a job. And so one day, you know, like when Nishio was doing a job, because he was a paper boy, we saw now that he rode past on his bike. You know, like he came across his sister talking to the manager for like one of her jobs. But this guy, he found out that like she was a ghoul, and he actually, you know, betrayed her and reported her, and that right there, you know, caused her sister life. But Nishio, like that right there, you know, his sister death, it made him so freaking cold that he actually, you know, tracked down the guy that had reported her, and he actually, you know, and he killed her. And so now we see that when he gets older and he actually starts going to school, we see now that like we see that he actually met Kimmy, you know, at the vending machine after she left her change in there, and that is when at first, you know, he had noticed that like she was like extremely pale, but he thought that like she can be useful, so they started, you know, spending time together. And like after the first night, or I believe it was the first night they had like slept together, he had learned her name and like learned her true meaning. And he was like wondering who gave it to her, but like when he asked her, she started breaking down and she begins crying. So obviously that right there, it was a very sensitive subject for her. But then we skip to where Kaneki, you know, like pretty much impaled him, you know, with like those tentacles. He was in so much pain, and you just saw all those coffee cans, you know, around him, but the wound was just not healing. And that right there is where Kimmy, you know, had first came across him. And so now we see that like Nishio, he was definitely glad to see her. And we see now that like when Kimmy asked him if he was a ghoul, we see now that like he had no strength to like really eat her, and we see now that he thought that like Kimmy would betray him and, you know, report him, and that right there would be the end. But she was actually willing, you know, to like let her be eaten. And so when he took a bite, that right there is what we learn about her parents and her brother that I believe was like 2 years younger than her, and they died in an accident. So that right there would explain, you know, why she was crying. And so we see now that like after learning that Nishio, he had, you know, supposedly, you know, had enough, but he like really stopped because he started caring for her. And that right there was like very beautiful. I definitely like that, because at first, you know, he was saying that he would like never, you know, trust anybody again. But now, you know, he's in love with a human, and that right there, you know, is really touching. And that right there will also explain, you know, how Kimmy, you know, had got that scar. And so now we see that because Kimmy was like in danger, Nishio had found the strength, and he kept going, you know, after Shu. And at first, you know, like Shu had impaled him, and that right there, you know, seemed like to take him out, but he had found the will to get up time and time and again. And Shu had found him so annoying that he like impaled him so many times that he was like pretty much close to killing him, but Nishio would not give up. And you just see like all this blood coming from his face. It was crazy. I was surprised that like he didn't die from that. But we have Kaneki asking Toka, you know, after their bodies kind of healed over time, he was wondering who was stronger, if she was like at full strength, and before they were like actually pretty equal, but now it seems that like Toka, she's actually stronger than him. And so we see that like Kaneki, he had called out to Shu right before he could like really even hurt Kimmy. And we see now that like that Toka, she had like taken a bite out of him, and that right there just like really set Shu off, because like to him, Kaneki only belongs to him, and nobody else can eat him. But we have Toka now at full strength because we saw her cognate, you know, coming out, because Shu had like brought out a pretty good point that there was no way they could beat him if they could not manifest their cognate, and that right there can only be, you know, like powered up by eating human flesh. And so now we see Toka's coming out, and I just know that next week it's going to go down. It would be so freaking epic. But like I said, this episode, it was definitely good. But despite, you know, like the pacing issues that I did notice, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. But of course, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And as always, please do not forget to like the video and subscribe, because that really helps me out. And you guys take it easy. I will see you all next time.